She's all mistletoe and Mariah Carey. He's whiskey, one-night stands, and a deeply rooted hate for the holidays. She swore she'd never fall for a man who sleeps around. So why is the neighborhood player the only one who hasn't even tried? Determined to solve the mystery, and maybe bruise her ego a little less, Emma sets out to find out why Jack Wilder hasn't made a move on her. Hello family, welcome to Storytime with Imzi. Please subscribe and like, it means the world to us. Also share this video to your friends and loved ones and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you as you do so. Sit back and relax as we dive into the story. The hallway of pine and cedar apartments smelled like cinnamon pine cones and sugar cookies. At least, it did until the door across from Emma Winters swung open and the scent of stale coffee and winter air came tumbling out. She peeked through her festively adorned wreath, blinking at the tall, disheveled man struggling with 2 suitcases and a lamp that looked like it belonged in a basement. His hair was too long, his scowl too deep, and he was wearing sunglasses, indoors, which made him look like the Grinch after a hangover. New neighbor, she whispered to herself, smoothing her red sweater like she was about to walk onto a stage. She stepped into the hallway. Hi there. I'm Emma, across the hall. Need help with that? He looked at her, the way someone might glance at a parking ticket. No, thanks. She blinked, thrown off for half a second. Well, welcome to the building. You picked a great time to move in. December's magical around here. There's a cocoa crawl next weekend, and I don't do Christmas, he cut in, dragging a suitcase over the threshold and slamming the door shut with a dull thud. Emma stood blinking in the hallway, surrounded by garland and twinkling lights, feeling like she'd just been personally offended by Ebenezer Scrooge's hotter, ruder nephew. From inside, the muffled thump of heavy boots and the rattle of a suitcase echoed off the thin walls. She crossed her arms. Who doesn't do Christmas? Back in her apartment, she returned to her playlist, but Bing Crosby sounded faintly judgmental now. Still, she couldn't help but glance out her peephole every few minutes, just in case her new neighbor came back out. For someone so grumpy, he sure had nice arms. And so, December had officially become a challenge. Not the shopping, not the decorating, not even her upcoming party for 20, no. Emma had a mission now. She was going to make Jack Wilder love Christmas, or at the very least make him smile, even if it killed her. And with that, she added an extra sprig of mistletoe above her doorway, just in case. The next morning, Emma found herself lingering in the hallway a bit longer than necessary, pretending to adjust the Christmas lights around her door. She didn't have to wait long. Jack emerged like a vampire dodging daylight, hoodie pulled up, earbuds in, and a large travel mug in hand. Morning, she chirped, bright as a sleigh bell. He grunted. That was it. Just a low, non-committal sound that might have been hello, leave me alone, or simply indigestion. Emma narrowed her eyes as he brushed past. You know, she called after him, there's a coffee shop down the street that makes peppermint mochas to die for. Just saying. He paused, looked back, and pulled one earbud halfway out. I don't do peppermint. Or mocha. She raised her eyebrows. Do you do Joy? Or is that banned too? He didn't smile, but something flickered in his expression. Amusement, maybe. See you around, Miss Christmas. And then he disappeared down the stairs. Later that week, Emma met her friend Clara at the wine bar for their regular Wednesday unwind, and over 2 glasses of Cabernet, she delivered the full Jack report. He's like a human icicle, Emma said. Grumpy, tall, avoids eye contact, smells like leather and heartbreak. Clara smirked. So hot. Emma frowned. Yes, but toxic hot. The kind that smells like a bad idea in cologne form. Clara leaned in, swirling her wine. So what's really bugging you? That he's not festive or that he hasn't tried to sleep with you yet? Emma almost choked. Excuse me? Oh, come on, Clara said, laughing. You've seen him. The guy's clearly a serial flirt. I'd bet he's slept with half the neighborhood. And you've lived across from him for 2 weeks now, and he hasn't even checked you out. Emma opened her mouth to argue, and froze. Because Clara was right. Jack Wilder was exactly the type of man Emma hated. Cocky, unbothered, emotionally unavailable, and allegedly irresistible. But what nagged at her was that he'd never even tried. Not once. Maybe, she said slowly, he knows I'm not the type. Clara sipped her wine, eyes gleaming. Or maybe, He's just not interested. That stung more than Emma cared to admit. And so the seed was planted, not of attraction exactly, but of curiosity. And for someone like Emma, curiosity was like mistletoe. Once it took root, it was hard to ignore. Back at her apartment that night, she stood in her fuzzy socks, stared at Jack's door, and whispered, "Why haven't you tried to sleep with me, Jack Wilder?" And just like that, the game had begun. Emma was not used to being invisible, especially not to men like Jack Wilder. Men who, according to the building's gossip loop, had a new visitor every other week. He wasn't exactly subtle. She'd seen one woman leaving in a trench coat and stilettos at 7 a.m. and another laughing too loudly in the elevator 3 nights later. But with her? Nothing. No sly smiles. No offhand compliments. Not even a roving glance. It wasn't that she wanted to sleep with him. God, no. He was a walking red flag, a leather-jacketed cliché with bedroom eyes and commitment issues. But the silence, the indifference, was driving her slightly insane. By December 10th, she'd had enough. Okay, she told herself one morning as she adjusted her candy cane earrings. Time to figure out what makes the Grinch tick. The plan was casual infiltration. Subtle recon. A few questions here and there, a well-placed conversation. Not flirting, just engaging. Her first opportunity came later that afternoon when she passed Jack in the mailroom. He was bent over his mailbox, wearing jeans that should have been illegal and a black long-sleeve tee that clung in all the wrong, or right, places. She caught herself staring and cleared her throat. Getting anything good? Or just bills and coupons for things you'll never buy? He glanced up, expression neutral. A collection notice. So joy. Emma laughed, testing the waters. What a festive word. Jack actually cracked a smile, barely. What about you? What does Miss Christmas get in the mail? Letters from Santa? Glitter-covered ads for scented candles. Today? Coupons for hot chocolate mix and an invitation to the holiday party I'm hosting next Friday. She held it up for him to see. You're invited, by the way. He didn't take it. Just looked at her, then the paper, then her again. Is it mandatory? Only if you want cookies and joy. He gave her a slow blink that somehow read as both sarcastic and resigned. I'll think about it. Progress. Maybe. That evening, she met up with Clara again, this time over gingerbread martinis, and relayed the interaction. He smiled. Emma said, giddy and confused. Like a real human expression. I think. Clara sipped her drink thoughtfully. And you invited him to your party. Bold move. I needed to gauge something. Anything. And he smiled, so that's something. Still no flirting? Emma shook her head. Not even a suggestive eyebrow. It's infuriating. Clara leaned back, smirking. So, what's the real question here? Why hasn't he hit on me? Or why do I want him to? Emma opened her mouth. Closed it. I don't, she said finally. I just don't like mysteries. Clara raised an eyebrow. Sure. We'll call it that. Later that night, Emma sat cross-legged on her couch, her tree twinkling in the corner, and stared at the paper snowflake Jack had dropped as he was leaving the mailroom. She'd picked it up like it was some sort of artifact. It was nothing. A scrap. But she held it anyway, wondering what it meant that the one man she wouldn't touch with a 10-foot candy cane was the one she couldn't stop thinking about. She looked at his door across the hall. Quiet. Closed. Predictably silent. He hadn't made a move. And now she had to know why. Emma wasn't trying to seduce Jack. Not really. She wasn't batting her lashes or wearing scandalous outfits. Though, okay, the red off-shoulder sweater she wore to take the trash out might have been a little cozier than necessary. But this wasn't about attraction. It was about understanding the enigma across the hall. That was all. Which was how she found herself holding a broken cookie tray in one hand and knocking on Jack Wilder's door with the other. When he opened it, he was barefoot, wearing sweatpants and a black t-shirt that hugged his torso like it had been stitched on by angels. His hair was damp, curling slightly around his ears. He blinked at her, expression somewhere between suspicion and annoyance. Emma smiled brightly. Hey, my oven's acting up again. It burned half a batch of sugar cookies and completely melted the handle off this tray. Any chance I could borrow your oven for, 20 minutes? He looked at her. Then the tray. Then back at her. I don't bake, he said flatly. I didn't ask you to, she chirped. Just your oven. There was a pause. Then, shockingly, he opened the door wider. Fine. Shoes off. She stepped inside and froze. His apartment was nothing like hers. Sparse. Neutral colors. No decorations. No lights. No pine-scented candles. No soul. She set the tray down on the counter. This place could use a wreath. Or a string of lights. Or a personality. Jack raised an eyebrow. It has a personality. It just doesn't scream at people. Mine doesn't scream. It sings carols through the walls. She grinned. That's Bing Crosby. And he soothes souls, thank you. Jack just shook his head and turned on the oven. While the cookies baked, Emma wandered around, trying not to snoop but definitely snooping. No photos. No mementos. Just a bookshelf with spy thrillers and worn poetry, and a record player with dust on the needle. Do you live here, she asked, or haunt it? He snorted softly. Somewhere in between. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed. Okay, serious question. He looked up warily. She gestured between them. Why haven't you hit on me? He blinked, stunned into silence for a full 2 seconds. What? I mean, come on, she said, not unkindly. You've hit on the yoga teacher. The dog groomer. I'm literally across the hall. Do I have bad flirting energy? He stared at her for a long moment, something unreadable in his eyes. Then he shrugged. You're not my type. It was a lie. She knew it. Felt it. And it stung anyway. Right, she said, laughing lightly, though her stomach twisted. Because your type is emotionally avoidant and leaves before sunrise. He didn't deny it. The oven beeped, breaking the tension. Jack turned and pulled the tray out, setting it on the stovetop. The cookies smelled perfect. Golden. Sweet. But Emma suddenly wasn't hungry. She gathered them in silence and moved toward the door. Thanks for the oven, she said. He nodded. At the threshold, she turned back. You know, I thought maybe you were avoiding flirting because you actually liked me. He met her gaze, eyes steady. Maybe I am. Her breath caught, but he was already walking back into the kitchen. She stepped into the hall, heart pounding, cookies forgotten. The door clicked shut behind her. And for the first time since December started, the warmth of Christmas didn't feel quite so comforting. It felt like confusion, and it felt dangerously close to hope. A few days passed. Jack didn't knock. Emma didn't bake. The air between their doors thickened with something unspoken, something that sparkled like frost but cut like glass. Emma had stopped humming carols in the hallway. Jack hadn't played his music once. Then the snowstorm hit. The news had warned them. Blizzard conditions, power outages likely, stay indoors. The weather anchor had chirped from the TV in Emma's living room as she wrapped presents on the floor. She figured she was fine. Plenty of food, candles, backup batteries, and 2 layers of flannel pajamas. But when the power actually went out at 8:13 p.m., plunging the entire building into darkness, she realized her heat was electric. By 9 o'clock, her toes were freezing, her candles guttered, and her phone's flashlight barely lit more than a few feet. She grabbed her coat and decided to do something unthinkable, knock on Jack Wilder's door. But he beat her to it. There he stood in the hallway, holding a flashlight and a thermos, his hair tousled and cheeks pink from cold. Lobby's warmer, he said. Emergency generator kicks on there. She hesitated. You coming? He asked. She nodded. They sat together in the empty lobby, wrapped in mismatched blankets from the building's emergency stash, perched on the brown faux-leather couch like 2 awkward teenagers at a sleepover. Jack unscrewed the thermos and handed her a cup. What is it? She asked. Whiskey. Pretend it's cider. She took a sip. Warmth bloomed in her chest. So did questions. They sat in silence for a while. The kind of silence that feels thick with history you haven't heard yet. Then she asked softly, Why do you hate Christmas? Jack didn't answer right away. He stared at the blinking red light of the exit sign, like it was pulling memories out of him. Christmas was always a lie, he said finally. My dad was an alcoholic. The kind who only showed up around holidays. When he did, he'd put on this fake smile, toss around a couple of wrapped bribes, and pretend to care. My mom would smile back like we were living in a commercial. And I'd sit there knowing it was all going to fall apart again by New Year's. Emma swallowed. I'm sorry. He shrugged. It is what it is. You grow up and realize some people just aren't wired for joy. Or stability. You're not your dad. Jack looked at her, eyes dark and tired. No. I just sleep around and ignore people who are actually worth something. She froze. Like you, he added, voice low. The lobby was quiet, but for the faint hum of the generator. Emma stared down at her cup, unsure how to respond. Her heart was thudding like a sleigh bell in a panic attack. I didn't want to treat you like that, Jack said. You weren't disposable. Is that why you ignored me? He gave a bitter smile. I figured you'd prefer it. Emma studied him. The way his jaw clenched, the small line between his brows. The truth of him was more fragile than she expected. Less arrogance, more armor. You're wrong, you know, she said. He looked up. I would have preferred honesty. Jack looked like he wanted to say something, but the words didn't come. Instead, he poured her another drink. They sat like that for a while, watching snow drift against the windows, listening to the slow rhythm of forced silence giving way to something more tender. And when she leaned her head against his shoulder, not in invitation, but in understanding, he didn't move away. He just let her stay. By the time the power came back the next morning, the tension between them had changed. Not vanished. Not resolved. Just different. Like the feeling of stepping onto an icy sidewalk. You're not sure if you're safe, or if everything is about to fall out from under you. Emma spent the rest of the week doing what she did best. Distracting herself with decorations, friends, and a to-do list that could have terrified Santa himself. Her annual holiday party was just days away, and she had a reputation to uphold. Gingerbread houses, signature cocktails, and a playlist scientifically curated to convert even the grinchiest soul. But Jack lingered in her thoughts like a stubborn lyric. He hadn't avoided her. In fact, he'd helped her carry boxes down from storage the next day, cracked a half-joke about her Christmas cult, when she hung mistletoe over the lobby elevator, and even offered her his spare power bank in case another blackout hit. Still, neither of them brought up the lobby, or the whiskey, or her head on his shoulder. It was driving her quietly insane. So when she saw him coming in from the cold on Thursday evening, she seized the moment. Hey, she said, holding up a tangled mass of lights like a trophy. I could use a hand. Jack hesitated in the doorway, snow dusting his shoulders. I don't do lights. You do electricity, she said with a grin. And these are definitely not lit. He sighed. Fine. They sat on her living room floor, untangling chaos while Jingle Bell Rock played faintly in the background. Emma passed him a mug of spiced cider and a bowl of pretzels. He accepted both without comment. You know, she said casually, you're not nearly as grumpy as you pretend to be. I'm grumpy enough, Jack muttered, frowning at a stubborn knot of wires. But you're here, she pointed out, nudging his arm. Untangling lights. Drinking cider. That's practically merry. He didn't reply right away. Then, quietly, he said, You make it easy. She glanced up. What? Being here, he said. With you. It's easy. Her pulse skipped. Neither of them spoke for a moment. When the lights finally blinked on in Jack's hands, Emma clapped dramatically. A miracle. He gave her a crooked smile, real, soft, unguarded. She was starting to crave that look. As she reached to hang them along the window, Jack stepped behind her to help, his hands brushing hers. They were close. Too close. His breath warmed her neck. Emma, he said, voice low. She turned to face him, and there they were, under the mistletoe. She hadn't even meant to hang one there. It must have fallen from the door frame earlier, hooked itself on the curtain rod by accident. Fate, maybe. Or the kind of coincidence that wasn't really a coincidence at all. Jack looked at her, searching her face. If I kiss you, it won't be nothing. She swallowed. Good. But I don't want to mess this up. She lifted her chin. Then don't. His hand came up to her cheek, tentative, like he still wasn't sure. Their faces inched closer. One heartbeat, then another. And then Jack pulled back. Emma's breath caught in her throat. I can't, he murmured. Not like this. She stepped back, hurt blooming behind her ribs. Because I'm not one of the girls you don't call afterward? He flinched. No, because I actually want to. The silence that followed was heavy and hot and impossible. She didn't ask him to explain further. She didn't say what she was thinking, that maybe she wanted it too much, and maybe that scared her more than being ignored ever did. Instead, she said, Thanks for the help, and turned away. And Jack, quietly, carefully, let himself out. The night of the party arrived wrapped in snow and glittering anticipation. Emma's apartment sparkled like something out of a holiday movie. Warm lights, fresh pine, the smell of cinnamon and spiced rum in the air. Laughter floated through the halls. Friends gathered with wine glasses in hand, cheeks flushed from cold and good cheer. But Emma was distracted. She was hosting. Of course she was hosting. She smiled, mingled, passed around her famous reindeer cake pops. But her eyes kept flicking toward the door. Waiting. Wondering. Clara noticed. "Still no sign of Mr. Silent but Smoldering?" she asked, nudging Emma's elbow. Emma forced a shrug. "He said he'd think about it," which in Jack speak probably means he's camped out in his apartment overthinking it. Emma smiled tightly. "Yeah, probably." Clara handed her a fresh drink. "So, what happened?" Emma exhaled. "Almost kiss. Very romantic. Very awkward. Then he bailed. Said he didn't want to mess it up." Clara raised a brow. "Mess what up?" "That's the part one don't know," Emma said. "And I'm tired of guessing." She was halfway to deciding tonight would be Jack-free, emotionally and literally, when the door opened. And in he walked. Jack Wilder, wearing a black coat dusted with snow, a real sweater, navy no holes, and a bottle of wine awkwardly tucked under one arm. The room didn't exactly go quiet, but Emma's heart did a little lurch as their eyes met. "Sorry I'm late," he said, moving toward her. "You came," she said, surprised by how unsteady her voice sounded. He handed her the wine. "I didn't want to, but I kept thinking about how mad you'd be if I didn't." She snorted softly. "Accurate." Jack glanced around. "Your place looks like Christmas threw up in the best way." She smiled despite herself. "That might be the nicest thing you've ever said to me." He took a breath. "Can we talk?" She hesitated, then nodded. Kitchen. They slipped past partygoers and into the kitchen, where the noise was softer and the lights glowed warm over the counter. Emma folded her arms, bracing herself. Jack didn't waste time. "I'm not good at this," he said. "Being honest. Staying." She said nothing, just watched him. "But you make me want to be better at it." Her chest tightened. "I thought avoiding you was respectful," he went on. "I didn't want to pull you into whatever mess I am. I sleep around because it's easy. No expectations. No connection. But with you, from the start, it felt different. And that scared the hell out of me." Emma blinked, throat thick. "So you ignored me? Because you were afraid?" "Yeah," he said. "And because I knew I couldn't treat you the way I treated everyone else. You deserved better." She looked at him for a long moment. "I did. I do." He nodded. "I know." Silence stretched between them again, but this time it wasn't tense. It was full. Alive. Then Emma stepped forward. "Jack, I don't need perfect. I don't need you to be someone you're not. But I do need honesty. And consistency. And the truth." Jack looked down, then back at her. "The truth is, I think about you constantly. I wanted to kiss you so badly I had to leave before I did it wrong. And I've regretted that every day since." Emma's voice was barely a whisper. "So don't regret it anymore." He hesitated, then leaned in. This time she didn't move away. And neither did he. They didn't kiss in the kitchen. Not then. The moment hung between them like an ornament balanced too delicately on the tip of a branch. Almost falling, almost flying, but Emma stepped back first. Not because she didn't want it. Because she wanted it too much. "We're at my party," she said softly, with a small, teasing smile. "It would be rude to abandon my guests for a make-out session with the brooding bad boy across the hall." Jack gave a soft laugh, real unguarded. Fair enough. But he didn't take his eyes off her. Later, Emma's pulse fluttered. Later, the rest of the evening sparkled in that golden haze that follows a turning point. Emma moved through her party like a woman who had just set down something heavy she didn't realize she'd been carrying for weeks. The weight of doubt, of second-guessing, of wanting someone and wondering if she should. Now she just felt light. Jack didn't hover. He talked to a few people, accepted Clara's pointedly suspicious glare with grace, even helped fix the music when her speaker glitched. He didn't flirt with anyone. Didn't disappear. He just stayed. At the end of the night, after the final guest had left and the apartment was quiet again, glitter in the carpet, wine glasses on the counter, Emma leaned against her doorframe, sipping the last of her cider. Jack appeared in his own doorway across the hall, arms folded, like he'd been waiting. She smiled. Still here. He nodded. Still. There was a long pause. Then Emma nodded toward the mistletoe above her door, intentionally rehung this time. Well, she said, heart pounding. Looks like you're out of excuses. Jack crossed the hallway. He stopped in front of her, gaze soft, hands in his pockets like he didn't trust them not to shake. Just so we're clear, he said, this isn't casual for me. Emma tilted her head. Then kiss me like it's not. So he did. There was no rush, no performance, no fireworks for show. Just warmth and slow certainty. The kind of kiss that doesn't ask for forgiveness or permission, but feels like both. When they pulled apart, he kept his forehead against hers, breath warm. I'm still not a Christmas person, he murmured. Emma grinned, fingers toying with the zipper of his coat. That's okay. You sure? Yeah. She smiled, eyes bright. Because you came anyway. Outside, snow fell in soft, silvery curtains, catching in the wreath on her door and the collar of his coat. Inside, under a sprig of plastic mistletoe, Jack Wilder, the man who hated Christmas and tried so hard not to care, was finally right where he wanted to be. And Emma, who had once sworn off every man like him, finally understood. Sometimes the best gifts come unwrapped.